Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are in my front garden and we are going to do a little bit of a tree tour. So we've been talking a lot about trees, you and I back and forth ever since Janie came into our garden and showed off some of our trees. I thought I would do an in-depth video for you guys to see all of the beautiful varieties that we have in our landscape. We've been getting a lot of questions on some of them, so I thought I would answer them. I think we will break up today's video into parts 1 and 2 because there's a lot to cover out here and there's a lot to cover in the back. So just a kind of a quick overview in our garden. We started gardening here in 2019 officially when we bought the home. And in the years leading up to it, I love trees, but I never got the opportunity to really grow trees. And then when I got to, I really got into it. And I think trees are like the backbone of your garden. And if you can get your tree game right, then everything else is just gonna fall right into place. And I definitely did not have my game tree right the first time around, and I learned a lot. I've actually lifted trees and moved them. I've swapped them from place to place. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But in the last few years, I've really just kind of dove in and I've met a lot of growers. We would drive to different nurseries on the hunt for just the perfect specimen for our space. And I'm just excited to share with you the knowledge that I've gained, and I've only scratched the surface of all things trees. And so I'm just constantly wanting to learn more and more and more about trees because I get such I just get so excited about trees, and I could just talk about trees all day, every day. So we are going to start the tour here in the front, and then we will do part 2 in the back. So keep an eye out for that video. So we'll start in this bed. And just as a quick reminder, we garden in about 1/4 of an acre. So that's the size of our full lot. It's like between 1/4 of an acre and 1/3 of an acre. I like to always be like, we're closer to 1/3 of an acre, but we're like right in the middle. So I just, the bigger number just sounds better. But we do garden in kind of a smaller space compared to maybe some of you guys or other people, but it's a pretty, to me, it's a pretty big space. And I think we were able to do a lot in this space in a short period of time, and with a diverse grouping of so many types of trees that I want to share with you guys. So we're starting this bed right here in front of one of my favorites. This is a blue Alaskan cedar, and to me, this is my Dr. Seuss tree, and I love it so much. The texture, it's so soft and feathery. The height of it, and I'll make sure to put up all of the specs on the screen. So it should get about 20 to 25 feet tall and about 15 feet wide if I'm not mistaken, but I'll double check. And again, we planted all of our trees in the landscape with the exception of one maple, which I'll show you, in 2019, May of 2019. I'll pop up some pictures for reference. And this little guy was like a wee little tree, and it just grew. And I always joke with Sergey, like, what are we doing that our trees are just thriving? And then I remember it's all that biotone that I give my trees. But anyway, so this tree is really beautiful. I think it's definitely architectural in the way that it branches its arms out. It just has these really beautiful pendulous branches with kind of like a softery, feathery look. And it really is a hardy tree, which I also like. The other great feature about this tree that I don't think a lot of people talk about is that it has the most beautiful aromatic, evergreen scent, that cedar scent. And it's perfect for arrangements in the winter time. It's also really beautiful in containers. So every year I'll come in and I'll just cut a couple of little branches underneath in the back so you don't really see it. And if I'm using a lot of it, then I'll usually order bundles of it, or I'll go to my friend's house who they have a forest of them, and I'll cut from their trees. But I think it's a beautiful specimen, and I think it goes especially well in this bed because it kind of curves this way. So it's that perfect structure to kind of fill in side, front, and back, if that makes sense. So it just filled in really beautifully in this area. And right over here is where we had our burgundy jewel vine maple that we just moved to the back. By the deck, that's the tree that was right over here that was not doing so well because it was getting full sun. So I have this empty space back here, which I do want to replace with something. Ideally, it would be something red because we have blue, green, we have yellow over here, and then I would like something red. We do have purple on the other side, so we thought about another evergreen, but if I could get another maple that can handle sun, because again, this area gets full sun, that's what I would want to do because I think that maple structure is so stunning over here. All right, let's swing back over here. And I want to show you this Chinese dogwood that I have back here, which At first glance, it doesn't seem like it's doing a lot, but it really is, because it's that dogwood that it blooms for. It's the last dogwood that blooms for us in the springtime, late springtime. And what I like about it being back here is that it draws your eyes from the front to the back, especially when everything else is kind of done blooming in the springtime. This kind of comes in and carries us over into the summertime. It has beautiful little white flowers that are almost like a little star shape. And again, having it back here seemed like a little bit funny because it's behind this beautiful big cedar. And you would think like you probably would put that in front of it, but actually it adds that interest and draws your eyes to the back of this little corner of our garden that doesn't get a lot of love, but I'm hoping to kind of tool this area next year to kind of add more interest back here. Now it's just kind of just a mishmash of a few little things here. And one quick little thing that I wanted to add is when it's done blooming, it leaves behind these little seed pods that look like that little fruit lychee. I don't know if you guys have ever eaten a lychee, but it looks just like that. And they're green to start out with, but in the fall time, look what happens. They kind of turn into that peachy red color. So it provides a lot of beautiful fall interest. And so right over here is our mulch pile, but don't pay attention to that. Right over here is a stunning blue weeping atlas cedar. And can we just take a moment and admire how beautiful this tree is? Just look at that icy blue needles. It just has the perfect shape of an umbrella. And if we pop out, I love the way we planted it. And we did not plant it this way the very first time. We actually planted it backwards. So the way I discovered that I planted this backward was through my arborist. He told me when I planted it, he came over and he was like, you planted the face backwards and then the bum is facing outwards. And I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that trees have faces and bums? And he's like, well, and then he explained to me how like that's how they refer to the spatial planting of the trees. I don't know if that's everybody. I don't know if that's all the professionals out there, but he was just telling me that, and I thought it was so funny. So he actually helped me move it the first time, and it was tiny. Again, I'll pop up some pictures for you guys to see. And it did have a kind of a longer branch going that way, but what that did is it blocked the space right here in the back. So I wanted it to open it up more and just kind of create a different shape with it. The cool thing about these trees though, you can get them from like so many different shapes and sizes. Really, they can be like tall and a little bit skinnier. They can be long, they can grow along a fence. They can create a fence, kind of like that could be a border for you. So, and they do take a while to grow that way, but I just think they're so striking. It's such a beautiful specimen piece. If you just don't have a lot of space, but you want something striking, I highly recommend this one if you can grow it in your zone, because it also doesn't require a lot of maintenance. In the springtime, what happens is it puts on the new growth and it's just like this fluffy, lighter green needle, and it's so pretty. It's such a beautiful tree. I'm so happy that we planted this one. And not only did we have it planted it backwards, we actually had it planted a lot lower. And last year, Sergey was really gung-ho about like, I want it to be kind of on a mound, and he was not letting that go. So what we did last year is we lifted it up, the two of us, we lifted it up and then we we brought in a bunch of mulch around it. So now it's more elevated and it adds more interest into the landscape because it was very flat. And so anywhere where you can add like a berm, oh, that is like the prettiest look in my opinion, because it just adds so much visual texture and architecture in the garden. So it's not just like one flat planting field, if that makes sense. The last tree I want to talk about in this bed is our beautiful cutie Shishigashira maple. This tree is one of my favorite maples. I think it's so striking. It just has these beautiful outgrowing branches with these crinkled little leaves. If you can come in close, you see how crinkled those are? And they're so tight. It's such a tight tree. I love it so much. And I think this one gets about 10 feet tall and maybe 7 feet wide. Maybe I'll make sure to put the specs up on the screen for you guys. But the other great thing about this tree is that it creates interest all year round. It looks beautiful in the wintertime because of its branching, especially if you can get some landscape lighting underneath it. It's really going to be striking. Or if you celebrate Christmas, we love to decorate this tree for Christmas time, and we just wrap a ton of lights around it. Again, creates that beautiful structure. In the springtime, when the leaves start to kind of break open, they're just like very, very light and delicate. And then in the fall time, it also puts on a show. It kind of starts out orange and then yellow comes in after that. And so again, you're getting summer interest, you're getting fall interest, you're getting spring interest, and you're getting winter interest. This is such an underrated tree in my opinion, and I think more people need to consider this maple for their garden because yeah, it's a beautiful piece. When we planted it here, we knew we wanted something between this bedroom and this bathroom, and this provided that perfect just that perfect planting space, and it's not going to get too wildly big. So if you step back a little bit, I know there's a mulch pile over here, but you can kind of see how it just kind of fits in that space perfectly. I love this tree so much. And even if we look at the trunk over here, just look how it curves. One of the things I always talk about in our videos is the trunk is really important to me. And I always pay attention to the orientation of how we plant our trees just to make sure we're getting more visual interest out of them. So let's move into this grouping of planting. This is what I call our tree island out here in the front. And before we planted this back in 2022, so this was only planted in April of 2022, we just had a beautiful Cherokee dogwood here that wasn't doing so well. So we decided to remove it. We wanted to create a little bit more privacy, and this grouping of tree allowed us to do just that. Starting over here, we have this beautiful Oregon green Austrian pine. And it's funny because the needles on this one is a little bit hard, so it's not as soft as some of our other pine, but it has that glossy look to it, so I think it makes it really beautiful. And what I like about the needle shape, if you come in closer, do you see how they just kind of curve inwards like this? So they're not just like growing outright, but they kind of curve in. So it almost looks like just like little hands going like this. So every time I see this, I'm always like, yes. It's just one of those like funny little features that I admire about this one. And in the springtime when it's starting to grow, it has just like these beautiful long shoots, and it has these little pine cones over here, and we like to keep it pretty open. I know some of them can be a little bit dense, but we like to make sure that we keep all of our pines pretty open. And right over here, we added a little rock buddy to this pine, because one of the things I highly recommend you think about when you're planting evergreens is adding rock or boulders to your landscape, because that creates another level of interest. And this one is interesting because we actually handpicked these to just match the curve of the bed perfectly. So do you see how it just kind of fits in there nicely? I just love the way that looks. It's almost just hugging the side of the tree, if that makes sense. Just a quick heads up, the kids are outside, the neighborhood kids, and they love me. They call me Miss Claudia, which I think is so cute because it makes me feel so mature. But I feel like they're extra loud when I'm outside, so you might hear them in the background, and that's okay. They're very cute, and I love their giggles, but that's what that noise is back there. So over here is one of my favorite red upright maple trees. This is the Emperor maple. I love this maple so much for several reasons, and let's get into it. One of the things that I like about this maple is in the springtime, it just has the most beautiful dark burgundy color, which is just so stunning. And in the summertime, this is what it's doing for us, and it's been doing this ever since we planted it. But do you see how there's kind of that burgundy outside and then kind of green on the inside? So it's actually creating a lot more interest, and this is one of the reasons why I like this one over the Bloodgood, because although the Bloodgood maple is stunning, it's just very red, which is, if that's what you're looking for in that space, I think that's the perfect thing to get. But this one kind of creates a little bit more interest. And then when you see the new growth, this is what it looks like. Do you see how it's red? This is all new growth. Look at how cute that is. Just so soft and delicate. Oh, so pretty. So this is exactly what it looks like in the springtime. And then as the season goes by, it gets a little bit harder and tougher. And the cool thing about this one too, it also has a rock buddy. right down there. We need to cut back that Daphne. If you look over here, you can see the branching. And I talk about often when you have crossing branches, that's something you want to make sure that you cut. However, in this scenario, I want to keep the branching crossing because it's going to create interest on all sides of the maple. And it goes back to that winter interest that this maple provides. Yes, it's going to lose all of its leaves, but you're going to be left with all of this beautiful branching to decorate or to admire. And again, that's where the landscape lights really come in and really make a beautiful impact on your trees. And right over here, the last tree is the Eastern, or it's the Louis Eastern White Pine, which is one of my favorite trees, and I think everybody should have this tree for several reasons. Again, if you come in closer, it has the most beautiful, vibrant, thin yellow, soft needles. It's just so fun to come out and play with it like this. Right now, it's pulling a little bit green, but in the winter time, it's that vibrant yellow. And it's funny because I feel, and I think we're gonna have talked about this, it like bounces the light off of it, right? It kind of gives it like this golden look. And in the summertime too, when it's pulling yellow, like the sun reflects off of it and then it just shines the most beautiful light into the garden. So this one, I think it only gets about 10 feet tall, or no, actually it gets a little bit bigger. It can get bigger, I think 20 feet. But if you keep it pruned back, then you can keep it at a manageable size. Again, it was pretty tiny when we got it, and just in 2 short years, it's put on so much growth. And right underneath, again, the last rock buddy that we have on this island. And the cool thing about this rock, again, why it's important to hand pick things if you can, is because this rock just curves around the root ball of this tree, and it's a little bit like a little pool. So it's like a puddle. So when we're watering or the irrigation is going off, water tends to fill up over here, and the little birds just love playing in it. It's like the cutest thing. I have a little bird bath, but they always tend to come to this area. But yeah, such a beautiful tree. All right, I just lost my cameraman for a quick second, but I wanted to show you guys the last tree in this bed over here is this Hollywood juniper. And I love this tree because of its structure and how it has these beautiful branching arms, and these can get actually pretty wild. So if you allow them to get big, they will really get big and create a beautiful, beautiful silhouette in your garden. They also, of course, have those beautiful berries that we all love, especially in the winter time when we're making wreaths or arrangements. These just have a beautiful scent. And the reason why we planted this back here was not only because it's pretty, but because when we lose the leaves on this maple in the wintertime, this juniper comes in and provides a backdrop to the maple. So it actually looks really stunning in the wintertime when you can see it peeking through from the other side. So that's why we have this one tucked back here. Of course, we keep it pruned pretty tightly because we don't want it to get too wild, but it can get really big and just go to town. Okay, let's come over here to this bed because this bed has a couple of really beautiful sculptural trees that I think are very fascinating. Starting with this one here, this is an Oriental Newton's spruce. And I believe Newton's means nodding in Latin, which really just, I mean, it fits this tree perfectly just because it has that nodding branching style. So the funny thing is about this tree is that we actually used to have it in that bed over there. So we swapped. The Alaskan cedar was over here and this was over there. And we knew that that one was going to get bigger and wider. So I don't know what we were thinking putting it here, because we knew, we should have known better that it was going to fill in more than this one. Now this one though is only supposed to get 10 feet tall. And it's, I mean, I'm not great with measurements, but this is definitely over 10 feet tall. And I believe it caps out at 4 feet wide. But again, it's just a really pretty like structural piece in the garden. You can really tuck this in anywhere. I believe their roots aren't that, they don't get too crazy. So you can even tuck these by your house if you want. And probably the favorite feature about this one is in the springtime when it puts on its little pine cones. It's just so, so pretty. Like this tree is beautiful right now, but in the springtime, it's just so stunning. It has like again, the purple little pine cones, and it looks so delicate and sweet. So I really love this one. I'm not sure why it's growing so tall, but it's obviously loving the space. I think it put on like at least a foot this year, right?
Yep.
Yeah, at least a foot. So anyways, it's very happy in this area over here. Next to it, this is the only tree that we did not take out when we bought our home. This is a Crimson Queen Japanese maple. And let me just pull it out so you can see how striking those leaves are. Again, this one is definitely a structural piece. We need to prune her back. She's kind of fluffy right now, but that's okay. We already gave her a pruning earlier this winter, but she can get away with getting pruned twice. And if you look underneath, this is where it's really cool. Just look at that branching. And in the time, it just creates so much drama and interest in this space. I love it so much. We used to have a lot of moss around it, but we actually removed it. But every year we get a little bit more growth on it. But this one gets only about 7 feet tall and 10 feet wide. So I think this one is a pretty mature tree. I would say, gosh, I don't know, 60 years old, maybe 40.
Well, if I remember correctly, the neighbors said when the developers built this neighborhood, they planted this tree here.
Oh, they did.
And that was what?
In the 60s. Yeah. So what then? So.
I'm not good with math, but that's, 60 years
yeah,
old.
Yeah. Well, you're way better than math than I am. So it's a very beautiful piece, and it's very important to this space because at one point we were being so silly and we're like, should we remove it and plant something else? And I don't even know why that thought came into our mind. But it's pretty because, again, this bed curves out right here. So it just fits that space perfectly. So that's another thing you need to keep in mind when you're planting your trees. Look at the shape of your beds because that can also help you determine what you're going to grow there, because you can grow things that kind of weep like this one, or you can grow things that are going to be more upright, things that are going to be a little bit more curvy, or something that's going to be more of a standard form. So that's also very important, and something that I started to pick up as I was learning more about trees. Like, I want this here, but I know it's not going to grow properly because it's going to look a little bit out of place. So again, size matters, the orientation of the tree matters, but also the bed shape that you're planting them in really, really matters and can make a world of a difference. It can like make or break where you plant your trees. So keep that in mind. One quick thing I did want to mention about this is if you are going to invest in planting trees like this in your landscape, invest in a good arborist. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses, and as much as I think I can come in here and be like, I can snip this, I can prune it, I can shape it, I know in the back of my mind, I don't know everything behind about why we prune certain things the way that we do. When we talk about fruit trees, fig trees, that I'm like, any day, anytime, let me show you how it's done. But when it comes to something like this is where I learned from our arborist. And I think what I want to do this winter time is set up a camera. If you guys are interested, is set up a camera when he comes to prune so you can see kind of how he takes something like this and just cleans it up and makes it beautiful. Because if you plant something like this and you don't maintain it, tragedy is going to happen. Because what's going to happen is it's going to be overgrown. You're going to end up with like an umbrella shape because you're going to think like, I'm just going to prune it back like I typically would another tree. And then I end up, when I drive around and I see other people's garden, I just see these beautiful maples, but they're literally like an umbrella, which if that's what you're going for, that's totally fine. But it's not doing justice to what this tree is supposed to do naturally. So again, buy this tree, yes, but invest in a good arborist, at least so you can learn the first couple of seasons how to prune it and maintain it. As beautiful as this is, it was not like this. Like, we would come in here, Sergey and I would just prune, and we thought we knew what we were doing, and we didn't. We did not know what we were doing, but now we do. And now I feel comfortable doing like a little bit of maintenance on it here and there, but I still just feel comfortable having our arborist do it for us, just because he just knows what he's doing, right? Like, it's better. So anyways, the neighborhood squad is coming. Are you coming? Now they're being shy. Who are you? You want to introduce yourself? John. This is John. Where's your brother? Jack, are you going to come?
Over there. He doesn't want to come.
Jack is the big kid of the neighborhood, but he's being shy right now. Come on, you want to be on camera?
I am a tree.
Okay, he is a tree. Is Cora, are you gonna come over? You wanna introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Um,
Owen. And who are you?
Cora.
Cora. Jack, are you really not gonna be on camera? Come on, you're the lead.
Hi.
This is the number one. Now can we finish our tour? This is our garden. It's just
Trying to get me, Jack.
so right back here we have a blue Swiss stone pine, which is very similar to the Oregon Austrian pine. However, it has a lot softer needles. Let me squeeze by this dahlia, but do you see how it's just a lot softer? And this one gets only about 10 to 12 feet tall. And if you see this at a nursery, you're probably going to see it, and it's going to be a lot denser than it is right now. And if you don't prune them, they can get kind of like full and just like a ball. But what we do is we prune back, and I've seen him do it, and we really just like go in and take out a lot of branches. Let me go back there and show you. Hold on. We prune the tips off every winter so it's not getting too wide, and then we come in and we prune anything that's getting too full in between each layer of branching. So we did a pretty good job this last year, so I don't think we're gonna have to do much next year, but we definitely like to keep things kind of open and airy if we can, because I think, again, that's just structurally a lot prettier. Okay, right behind me we have another maple. This is a green leaf Japanese maple. It's probably one of the most popular ones you'll see in gardens, and pretty like widely available, and a lot of nurseries carry this one. So it's just a green leaf Japanese maple. This area again gets full sun and it does great. You do want to keep it pruned because you don't want it to grow too densely, especially as they age. Right now we're still in that pruning and shaping phase because you can see we have some lower branches and things are just kind of a little wild right now, but that's okay because we only planted this one 2 years ago. So we're still in that phase where we're really shaping it and getting to where we want it to be, which is a little bit more of a standard form, more heavy up top, and allow the branching below to show more. Right now you're not going to see too much of it, but we can get closer so you can see what you will see. But I think the more we limit up, the better it's going to look overall. And that's going to continue giving me space right here down below to plant other things. So again, if you're just looking for a simple, low maintenance, can handle a lot of sun, doesn't get too big, I think it's 10 feet. Do you know off the top of your head, 10 feet tall?
No,
Or bigger?
no, bigger. I've
Bigger?
seen much bigger. Okay.
Well, I'll put the specs up on the screen for you guys. But anyways, I think it's just a lovely maple. And right down here is where we have this really cute weeping Norway spruce. Look at how pretty these pine cones are. Look at that. So this has more of a weeping habit, and it grows outwards. And the thing I like about this is it grows right over this rock. And if you're looking for something to climb low, this is going to be a perfect contender for that. It doesn't really require a lot of maintenance. The only thing that we've been doing with it, because we don't want it to grow completely low, Sergey staked it back here. So you can see that we pulled it back a little bit. Let me go in here and show you guys. So do you see how it's not the greatest job, okay? So don't judge. But do you see how it's just staked up? It used to be a lot bent over a lot more, but we wanted it to get a little bit more height before it started to weep. So after this, we're probably not going to stake it further. We just want it to start weeping now. So finally back here, it's a little bit of a jungle because the dahlias are taking over, but we have a Western arborvitae, Fluffy, and Proven Winners actually sent this out to me, gosh, I would say, I can't remember, probably like at least 2 years ago. And they wanted to test the packaging, and they asked me if they could ship us some plants, and I was like, absolutely, you can, anytime. And it was in its container for the longest time, and then I finally got it planted, and it's just doing really well back here. It brings in a little bit of that yellow element in this bed because we have green, we have blue, we have red, and now we have this yellow guy. So I typically wouldn't plant an arborvitae in the landscape like this as a specimen piece. However, I think it works just because of the shape and the color of it, and it doesn't get too big, which I like. So if you have little areas that you want to add an element of evergreen, tucking one of these in it's not gonna be a bad thing. I think when you think about arborvitaes, you probably think of them as a screen because that's how we usually use them, or in containers as that centerpiece. But I think you should challenge that. I think it's okay to use things the way that they're not meant to be used for. Again, I probably wouldn't use like a regular, regular arborvitae, but this one just works back here. And I really like that we added it. And it just, again, adds that element of yellow that we're missing in this bed. So really pretty. I'm really happy that we have it and that we planted it back here. So right back here, we do have an empty spot, and it's because we planted a hinoki and it did not make it. And it did not make it because we didn't have the proper irrigation running to it. So it dried out, and I was so bummed about it because it was such a pretty little tree. So I do want to come in the fall time right now, like right around the corner, and plant a hinoki over here. It might feel like this area is already really dense, and it really is, but I don't plan on planting dahlias and cosmos and other cut flowers back here next year. I want to do more bedding annuals, so they're going to be low, closer to the ground. So I think the hinoki will actually fit the space really, really nicely. And the last trees that I wanted to show you guys are these beautiful Venus dogwoods that we have in our planting strip. Mom's car is right here, so let me just squeeze through to show you guys a better look at them. These are such a beautiful dogwood. These are a hybrid, and they're very fast growing. They grow about up to 15 to 20 feet tall and wide. So they're a great tree to plant if you want something that's going to put on size quite fast. Not only do these just have a beautiful shape, glossy, beautiful leaves, but they have the most stunning white flowers in the springtime, and they're just massive. I'll see if I can pop up some pictures for you guys. But this is like such a showstopper. Everybody that walks by, we have a lot of people that walk in our neighborhood, and they stop and they admire these trees. I get so many compliments on them. We have 4. We want to plant 2 more on the other side. But what I like about them is before we planted these trees, it just felt like we were very exposed to everything. And although we live in a really quiet street, which is amazing, it still just felt like we were out in the open. So these kind of provide a little bit of that shield, and once they start putting on a little bit more growth, we're going to allow them to start branching out even more, which is just going to create more interest. So if you're looking for something that's fast growing, I definitely recommend these Venus dogwoods. And once again, they also put on those little ornamental berries in the fall time. So you're getting spring interest, you're getting fall interest, and you're getting beautiful summer interest as well. All right, guys, well, I think that will wrap up part 1 of our tree tour. We'll definitely do some winter tours as well, so you guys can see when there's nothing here but the trees, because I think that will also make a big difference in your tree selection if you see anything that you like here. I'm excited to show you part 2 because we have some really fun trees in the back that I don't think you guys have seen quite yet. And we also have a lot of things that we haven't planted, which I will do a quick swipe through so you can see all of the trees that I've bought this last year that I plan on planting in that side garden. But yeah, very fun and exciting things to come to that side garden that I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's tour. Let me know if there's anything that you have questions on, any feedback, if you have any idea of what we can put right in front of that Alaskan cedar, that would be great. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today in my garden, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.